Thanks for joining us today. I hope you've got some nice lunch to sit and enjoy it. If you have any questions or any feedback, please chuck it into the chat. Would love it if you just put your name and introduce yourself, where you're from, in the comments. That'd be great. Thank you. We're going to give it till 5 past just to make sure everyone can join us. I know people join from other calls and things over lunchtime. If anyone's got anything delicious they're eating while they're listening in, please chuck that in the chat as well. It always makes it good to feel hungry as I go through. Keeps me on my toes. Hi, Ross. Good to see you again. Hi, Tony. Good to see you. Welcome along. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Richard. Hi, Maria. Hi, NM, whoever you are. If you want to say hello, that'd be great. So I'm going to give it just to 5 past before we get started properly. Hi, Rich. Thanks for joining us today. I really want to ask if you're a magician, but I'm going to avoid that obvious question. No, I've said it now, haven't I? Never mind. We'll just give it another minute or so before we get going. Amateur magician. Okay, fair enough. That's better than me. I'm a zero magician. However, I may accidentally produce a black cat as we go through this morning. I've recently adopted a new rescue cat, and she has not fully grasped the concept of what a webinar is yet, and has tried to get involved a couple of times. So if you see a black tail going across my webcam, don't panic. I haven't conjured up a cat. It is my new adopted cat. Right, well, hello and welcome. I'm going to get started. If any others do join us, they should hopefully be able to get in okay. As I said, my name's Luke, and thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, or if you're unsure of anything, please either pop the raise your hand up and then stick something in the chat, or just stick it in the chat. I will keep an eye on it and monitor it as we go. The aim of today really is just a bit of an introduction to some real-world example use cases for AI, get you start thinking about your own AI use cases and how you can evaluate and pilot them. Obviously, with sort of half an hour, 45 minutes, there's only so much we can go through, but I think I've got 8 use cases in here as we go through. So let's crack on. So just very briefly about us. So Intergage, we've been big proponents of AI for a while. We started using some of the specialist tools around 2019 onwards. I joined in November of 23, and straight away I worked to make sure we were adopting AI in the best possible way across our group of companies. So although I have the ridiculous job title of Group Head of AI, I don't have a huge team. It's me. I just that I work at group level. Intergage is a group of B2B marketing agencies. We have one that specializes in HubSpot, for example. And yeah, my role is primarily to make sure we're making best use of AI across the group. What we found though in doing that is a lot of our customers and organizations that we worked with were asking us for help with how they can adopt AI. And so after we published our AI statement at the start of last year, and some other supporting documents around that, I started sharing best practice to clients and at seminars. And by word of mouth, that's now become a big part of my role. So I speak at a number of events. We've also developed internally some use case playbooks. So this is how we use AI, and just a simple, you might call it a standard operating procedure, or it might be an evolution of that for your organization. Just ways that we can standardize how we use AI to make sure that we're using it safely, legally, effectively, and efficiently. And towards the end of last year, or around the middle of last year, sorry, we developed an AI framework for business adoption and launched a program called Campfire with Dorset Chamber. We've run that every month since October, and we have a 100%. I would recommend this course to other people. I'm going to have a bit more detail on that at the end of today, but I promise there is no hard sell. Today is mostly about showing and telling you some of the ways you can use AI potentially in your business today. So where are we now? Current state of AI is that most folks are experimenting. We find that the tools are maturing and that AI is integrating into existing systems, whether you like it or not. I've only so far in the last year had one person from an organization say they would not use AI in any form. I find that challenging because Google will give you an AI overview. Microsoft have it within Copilot and Windows itself. Tools like Salesforce and HubSpot are integrating AI within their applications. So I think that's unrealistic way to approach things. And what we're starting to see is that laws and regulations are beginning to appear. There are some specialist areas where there is already guidance on full legal requirements. That covers things like autonomous vehicles and things like identification of individuals using biometric data. But one thing we're starting to see, and I'd love to know in the chat if anyone else has had this, is that we've been asked by clients and suppliers how we use AI as an organisation. So if you've been asked by a client or partner or supplier how you use AI, can you just chuck that in the chat? I'd be curious to know if anyone has had that so far. We've only had sort of 4 or 5, but certainly it is something we're starting to see in procurement, that people are asking, what is your use of AI as an organisation? But yeah, okay, thanks, Ross. So one of the things one of the parts of the workshop we like to do with Campfire is have a think about what are the possible use cases for AI within your organization. And broadly speaking, we break that down across 4 different types. So innovation, what are the new opportunities that are enabled by AI? So what can you do now that was impractical before? Maybe that's personalization at scale. Maybe it's a new opportunity that is that comes from some analysis. What are the automation-based use cases you have? So this is improving value-based tasks. So for us, for example, we can use AI to help us to research and write better blog articles for our clients. And obviously that allows us to do that with greater value for them in the same time frame. Are there productivity tasks that we can look at improving? So for example, recording meetings and using AI tools to transcribe those and summarize the actions. And then there are their insight use cases. So ways you can use the data analysis capabilities of AI for improved reporting and analysis. One of the ways I had a recent workshop, I had someone from a visitor attraction, and they threw in a large chunk of their customer reviews over, I think it was 5 years worth of data. And what it identified was there was actually a common issue that came up. I think it was in September of the year, each year, that they hadn't spotted. So they were on top of their feedback, but they threw this big chunk in just to kind of see if it spotted any trends. And they were able to identify a seasonal issue with their visitor attraction that they were then able to look at. That was only possible because the amount of data they were able to load into ChatGPT in this case, which was fully anonymized, there was no personal identifying information loaded in, was able to analyze it in that much depth with that much, with that size of information put in. And as AI tools are getting better, the context of the amount of information we can put in is growing all the time. It's pretty much exponential. And what we see is that you can use it to analyze bigger and bigger data sets, to identify common themes, perhaps find insights that you might not have identified. And sometimes that can lead to innovations. It can lead to ideas that you perhaps might have missed with AI. So with that said, I'm going to crack on to some example use cases. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple through slides, and then I'm going to jump out and do some actual practical live demos. So fingers crossed when we get to that point. They say don't work with children, animals, or live demos, but let's try at least one of those, and maybe a second one will hop into shot in a second. So one of the things that we see a lot of people starting to use AI for is creating images. One thing I use it for a lot is image headers for my newsletter. Now, I think it's quite obvious to spot some of the basic AI images that are created. And I think part of the reason for that is if you use the sort of standard DALL-E model, which comes from OpenAI, the people who write ChatGPT, I think it has quite a sort of cartoon style that's quite obviously AI generated. So what I would say is try some of the other tools that are out there, or perhaps put a more detailed prompt and find one that works for you. For me, I love Ideogram. It looks a bit like this. So you can put in a prompt, and then you can pick size. And one of the reasons I love it is it has this magic prompt function. So what this does is it actually analyzes what you've written in and then rewrites it to better prompt the image creator. And what I find with that is I get much more usable images first time. The other reason I love Ideogram, which is not such an issue now, but historically, AI image generating tools have been really bad at can I just check? Can everyone see the presentation? Can you just put a yes or no in the chat? I've got one person who says they can't, but I've got a couple of thumbs ups. Can you just put something in the chat if you can't see it? That'd be great to know. Yeah. What I'd say then, if that was you, I think it was Ross. If you want to try maybe dropping off and coming back in again, that would be great. But I'm pretty sure it's still running and it's running okay. Certainly, I can see it as I would expect it to be on here. So yeah, so using Ideogram, it will analyze the prompt for you and then create an image, and it will generate 4 images, and then it will suggest which it thinks is the best. I find that a great way of generating images. You can be very specific as well in terms of styles. You can ask it to do cartoon styles, anime, animation style, stop motion, whatever it is, futuristic. And I find, generally speaking, I get what I want first time. That's a tool that works for me. It's free for commercial use for up to 5 uses a week, which is generally speaking enough for me to do my newsletter. But other tools are much more involved, but can give you much greater depth. So one thing that I found is there's a really good resource for how to prompt create good images that are usable, and it's actually written by Microsoft. And there's a link to it, which I'll include in the slides. You'll get a copy of the slides after the end of today. We'll send that round. But if you do have any other questions on that, then please feel free to chuck them in the chat as well. So what are some of the ways that I use AI? Well, I have a great phrase that was given to me. There was a phrase that one of my old bosses used to use frequently, and I've adopted it as my own, and that is to be curiously lazy. And I think that's a good way to think about ways that you can use AI. What are tasks that take your time that can be automated? For me, one of those was that this is what my diary looks like. And I color code by category the different types of things I do. So some of these are perhaps internal or client work, some of them are research, some of them are meetings, but Outlook doesn't have a button that says create me a summary of the hours per category. And at weekly or monthly meetings with my boss, he wants to know how I'm spending my time. So what I did is I said to ChatGPT, how can I produce a summary of the hours that I spend on each category in Microsoft Outlook for a given date range? And what happens there is it then said, hey, here's a few ideas. The first one was just an export that came into an Excel CSV. For me, that didn't work because the format it comes out in, it then takes you some time to reformat that to make it a useful set of information. But the second suggestion it gave out of 3 was to use VBA, which is Visual Basic, to create a macro in Outlook. I have never written Visual Basic. I've done a tiny bit of programming in my past, but it's not something that I do currently very much. But it gave me all of the steps. So open the editor, paste this in here, create that in there. I thought, great, I can have a little button that is coded for me that when I press it, will do a summary. It didn't work. So I followed all the steps, I put the code in, it didn't work. So all I did then was take a screenshot of the error, put that back into ChatGPT and said, I did number 2, it didn't work. It then gave me some further suggestions for how to resolve it, and that did work. Sorry, I can just see the browser version of it. Okay. Yeah, glad you're back in, Ross. Okay. So the outcome, I now got a category summary button. So I can press in my Outlook, I put in the start and finish date range, and it gives me a summary. It took me at most an hour to get that up and running. I'll be quite honest, half an hour of that was because I didn't realize it was in US date format for ages, and I kept tripping myself up why the category summaries didn't look right. It was entirely me being stupid. But there's an important point there, is that I needed to be specific to say that the date and time was in UK format, so day, month, year, not month, day, year. Because I was building this in June, and it was 06 as the month, I didn't spot that it was putting them the wrong way around because the date ranges were within the kind of, they were still correct even with the swapping of day and month around. So what? Well, it cost me nothing. That was taking me about 20-30 minutes when I tried it using the CSV version. The macro now takes me about a couple of minutes at most. That's 25 minutes per week I could have been saving there. As I said, it took me about an hour to do the macro, but being honest, half of that was just I couldn't work out why the actual summaries were wrong, and it was just purely the date range. We're now starting to roll this button out across the wider team, and actually it's replacing a paid-for software tool. So although I did it as a bit of an experiment for myself, it's now helping us generally because we're no longer having to have the team log in more than one place. And so Yes, I'm spending a little bit more time to make that as a proper add-in, but again, I'm using ChatGPT to help me do that. And I show this example not that I expect everyone to go away and do something like that, but just as a use case of this is the kind of thing you can start to use these tools for. Is if you don't know how to do something, you can ask it, and then if it doesn't work, you can ask it how to fix it and work through that. Next use case we're just going to talk about is using AI to transcribe and summarize calls. Does anyone do this already? I'd love to know in the chat if you already use one of these tools. So these are three of the more common ones. So Otter AI, Fireflies, and Copilot. Yep, I can see a yes. Probably one of the more common use cases, but certainly one if you're not already doing it, it's worth looking at. So within Microsoft, if you have the Copilot for Office plugin, you can push a button and it will record and transcribe the call, and you can actually interact with that and ask it questions in real time. The Fireflies and Otter will do a similar thing, but in their case, you invite them into the call and they show up as an additional agent. When they, Google Workspace Gemini has a similar one. There are others that I'm aware of that do, for example, there's one within Zoom. But certainly for us, we love Fireflies. One of the reasons we love that is it works with almost all of the webinar programs that we use. Crisp AI is another one that I've come across. And what's great about them is they will then produce your, not just a transcript, but also a summary of what happened during that meeting. And that's great, but I always have the idea of improv in the back of my head. So yes, and how can I build on that? So one of the things I've done with our internal team is where we have sales prospecting calls. We went through a little process with the sales team to say, right, what are specific questions we need to include in the call? We created an example sales proposal document. Then we use these tools to transcribe the call, and then we have some prompts that convert that transcript into a proposal. So not just are we recording the call and saving some time with the transcription, creating a nice summary, but also we made sure we asked specific questions during that call that then allow us to create a draft proposals document that we can then refine and send on to the client. Now, for my colleague that does the sales prospecting primarily in that company, he reckons this saves him 4 or 5 hours of time for each call so far. So that's he's not having to transcribe the calls afterwards. He's not having to spend as long on the summary. Obviously, the usual caveat with any AI tool is to make sure you check anything it's written, so make sure it's got names and places and facts correct. But with a little bit of checking, it's still saving a lot of time versus actually transcribing that call. And now we can just put a prompt in and it will put that into draft proposal. So we have an example of the sales proposal document over here. We have the specific questions we need to ask, and then we have the transcript, and then we convert the transcript into that draft proposal. To give you an idea what the prompt looks like, this is a slightly simplified version just for presentation. So this is the exact prompt. I have provided 2 inputs, an example sales proposal. So I'll put that into ChatGPT. I'll put a transcript in, and then I'll say to the AI, your task is to review the call transcript, extract the key information relevant to each section in the example sales summary. So all of our questions relate clearly to headings within that document. Output a new sales proposal formatted exactly like the example document, including all headings, subheadings, and any required detail. Here are the inputs, and then I'll just list the file names. Please produce it in the same style, structure, and tone as the example document. And what we find is that really shortcuts that process for us. And that's another great example of a way you can use AI. So yes, you can use it to transcribe, but what can you then do with that data? And I'd always get people to, aside from being curiously lazy, I'd always suggest to people when they're looking at use cases for AI to think of that from improv. So yes, and when you do improv, you always build on what was there before. So another great use case is, and I'm going to use Microsoft Copilot as an example, but this could equally be done with ChatGPT or Gemini or one of those, is converting an existing document into a slide deck, and also perhaps asking some questions of that. So wish me luck. We are going to drop out into that document for now. Live demos, always dangerous, but hey, let's live on the edge a little bit. 1 second, make sure that loads. First failure, but here we go. Right. So hopefully you can all see my screen now has changed to an example document that I have. So I've been doing some work over on the Isle of Wight with the Yarmouth Harbour Commissioners recently, and this one of the things I spotted when I was doing research for there was actually the pier at Yarmouth Harbour is quite interesting. So what I did is I took the web page, pasted it all into this Word document. So this is a fairly small document, but this is just a copy of the web page as an example. And what I can do with Microsoft Copilot, but equally I could have loaded this document into ChatGPT or any others, is I can just say, I can ask it any questions I want in here. So I can say, can you tell me what year the pier was built? Now, yes, I've got only a 5-page document here, but you can see, but you could imagine that this is a much larger document that would be much more useful fit. One thing I love about Copilot in the way that it works is it will show you exactly where within the document that information came from, and that's great. Yes, and so what can we do with that? Well, imagine I'm a marketing manager there and I want to get some social media posts about the harbour. Please can you write me 5 short social media posts based on this document that are fun and factual? Again, live demos, always dangerous. Last time I demoed live with this, Microsoft had a problem. Here we go. So you can see it's given me a good start on some posts I could use. So did you know it was built in 1876? Steamers, heritage vessels, etc., etc. So that's great. What about if I wanted to take this and make a quick presentation? So I'm just going to share another window. So in this example, hopefully you can all see that. So I've got a blank PowerPoint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to write a short presentation based on that Word document. So please create a short presentation based on the document. There we go, appear demo, and go. And I haven't actually tried this one live, so let's see how this goes. Always fun. So what you'll see is, first of all, it will outline the sections that it's going to break the presentation into. Then it will start working through the slides for each of those sections. And then hopefully fairly quickly, it will create some slides for me. One of the things I love about PowerPoint and Copilot is it also will create speaker notes. So you can see down the bottom here, if I expand this a bit, it's also given me notes around the content on each slide. And the other thing I love is it gives the original content that it used to create that slide as it done so. So it's created 13 slides, just talking through the elements of that. So a bit of the historical background and a bit of a timeline, and it's used a photo from the original document. Talks about the early construction, challenges, community response. Yes, this isn't a final useful PowerPoint, but actually I think it gets you, 70, 80% of the way, and then you can finesse it and build it up yourself. So that's just 3 quick ways you can use AI in your business using Microsoft Copilot, but equally all of those things I've done there you could use with any of those other tools you mentioned. I'm going to go back to the slides now, so hopefully that is presenting. If it's not showing for anyone, please let me know and I will rectify that rapidly. Good, thumbs up, that's always a good start. So next example I'm going to show is using, next example I'm going to talk about is using Gemini.google.com specifically. So all the things we talked about so far, there's a variety of tools, but Gemini is Google's AI tool, and one feature it has that's really, really great is if you use the Chrome browser, you can put prompts in there that will go off to Gemini. And one great tip you can do is you can say summarize and then put a YouTube video in. So if you've got a YouTube video up, maybe it's an hour and a half, 2 hour long podcast, and you want a particular section of it or you want a summary of it, you can just chuck that into the start there, or you can go to gemini.google.com and ask the same thing. Where this is really helpful is if there is a long video and there's just one section of it you want, Then you can say, where is the section on this? What are the timestamps? And it'll tell you it's at 1320 or whatever, because not all videos are time coded very well. I find this really useful because my boss loves to send me lots and lots of videos and say, what do you think about this? Hours and hours worth per week sometimes. And I simply wouldn't be able to get through those. So I can summarize them, just read a summary of it. And then if there are sections I want to dig into, I can then go in and pick those sections out. So coming back to use cases within your organization. So we've given a few examples there. Hopefully that's given you some ideas. Just wanted to give a bit of a reminder of the way that I would start to look in any organization on how we can adopt AI. So what are the innovation ideas? So new opportunities, automation, ways for improving the deliverable things that we do, productivity, ways of improving back-end tasks. Are there things we can automate? Are there tasks that we do that take a lot of our time, but actually don't require a lot of our intelligence to do so? Those are great places to start quite often. And are there insights we can get from improved reporting or analysis? Once we've got some of those use cases, we like to follow this process for piloting. So we identify those via a brainstorm, and we'll then sort of look at them versus our own values and decide if there are any measures we can put in place for those. Then we'll prioritize them. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we have 16 use case playbooks that we've developed as an organization. Actually, I think it's a few more than that now. We looked at which ones of these would potentially save us the most time collectively. Then what we did is we said, right, well, this one needs a tool. It costs us $30 a month, whatever it might be. What we're going to do for 3 months is we're going to roll that out for 5 users. Compare it with 5 users that don't have it. We can do regular catch-ups to share learning and see how we're going. We'll then do a review of that. And at that point, at 3 months, we'll say, right, versus the measures we put in place, do we want to expand this and roll it out to the rest of the team? Do we want to refine it? So are there some things we learned, actually want to have done it differently and rerun it? Or do we want to ditch it? I say ditch, but actually it should maybe be paused, because what we found with one use case was that when we first tested it in July of last year, the AI output wasn't good enough, but by September and some new models, it was good enough. So actually we were able to bring that one back out of hibernation. And then when we roll something out further, we look at how do we show and tell that to the wider organization? How do we document it? So using a standard operating procedure or a playbook, for example. And then what is our plan for how we roll that out if it's a larger organization I'm working with? Obviously don't want to just chuck it out to everyone. There we go. Now, I don't have a lot of time to talk through this in a half an hour, 45-minute webinar today, but if you'd like to know more on that, feel free to join us at the Campfire webinars that we run with Dorset Chamber. The next step on from those, obviously, how do we review and evaluate those use cases? And here are just some ideas of the ways that you can look at doing that. So for an innovation-based use case, we might look at perhaps leads, sales, or emails. For automation, we might look at what time is it saving? Is the quality of our output better? One thing I've been working on with an organization is converting scanned documents, into a standardized format that come from a few different people. What we've found is that as the models have got better, the quality has got beyond the point of it. It's got better than a human converting it into the correct format. So now obviously we're able to save time with that. Are there any cost savings where we do that? For back-end tasks, it tends to be just more around time save, output quality, and cost saving. For the insight things, what the values of the insights identified. So something we find when we work through use cases with an organization or internally is we discover when we start using a tool in a particular way, actually opens us up to something completely new that we hadn't thought of. And although that might not have been in the original scoring for that pilot, we needed to allow for it because that had a value in itself. So there was one use case we ran where the outcome actually of what we set out to achieve in terms of cost and time saving was pretty negligible. But what we found was it identified a couple of new areas for us to look into that gave us a larger target market, an area we hadn't identified with that client. So that was particularly useful. We're getting towards the point of Q&A, but just a couple of other little bits to talk through. So Ethics and how we use AI is obviously a much larger topic that I cannot possibly cover in a lunchtime seminar. But some of the questions we ask ourselves when we're looking at use cases is, do I want to use AI to do this? So sometimes this is a brand, not a technical decision. I use an example that there is a PR agency I'm aware of, and they have in their statement on their website, they say that writing a press release will always be an entirely human endeavor. We will not use AI for that. We do use AI to review documents, to summarize them. We do use AI to transcribe meetings, but we will not use AI to write press releases. And, for them, that is a specific statement they've said. This is how we want to work. Perhaps it's around actually, an example I would use as well is, I needed to change broadband provider recently. It was a 40-minute hold time if I wanted to speak to someone at that organization. If I'd have, if there was an option, press 1 to speak to an AI agent, and, it was able to help me in 95% of the cases, I would have been happy doing that. If I ring my doctor, I might not want to speak to an AI to give it my symptoms and to chat through things with it. I might want a human, or equally, I might not want a human in that case. But really, it's about what's the expectation of our clients, customers, or users, and being transparent about that. So sometimes the use cases, they might be technically possible, but are they the right thing to do? Have we considered GDPR if we're using any personal identifiable information? So when I talked about the reviews thing with the visitor attraction, they removed the names of any of the people from that before they uploaded it to make sure that they weren't using it as a data processor. But if we're going to start using it to do or analyze customer data, then obviously that's a consideration you need to make. What does a control look like? If we're going to use AI, have we got people that we can control? People that we can measure as a control versus people using the AI tool, and how do the two things compare? How long do we run a pilot for? Is it worth running it for 3 months? Is that long enough? Does it need to be 6 months or maybe a year? And then what training and resources are needed to run the pilot? If we're rolling it out to, perhaps we run the first phase of the pilot with 3 users, and then we roll it out to 10, there's going to then be a training need or perhaps purchasing of a tool need. So these are some of the things we need to think about when we look at use cases. When we prioritize, for us, the use cases primarily look down at, we did the number of, the time saved was generally the main measure, but multiplied by the frequency to help us prioritize it. So we had one task that takes about an hour. We thought we could save about 20 minutes on, but it was done frequently. We had another task that took about 6 hours. We thought we could save about 2 hours on, but it was only done by one person once a week. So we prioritized the one that had the larger when we did that multiple, and which is the safest to trial. So we talked about that on the previous slide. So we've got just about 10 minutes now left for questions and things. Thank you for joining us. If you do have any questions on use of AI, please do chuck them into the chat. We do also run an AI newsletter. We've got over 1,000 subscribers now. If you'd like to subscribe to that, you can scan the QR code on screen, but also we'll get you a copy of these slides. Also mentioned Campfire, which is the half-day workshop where we go into a lot more detail, so more use cases, but also we talk about things like governance, policy, and legal implications. We talk about how you put good checks in place for AI content, and go into and run some actual specific workshops as well around developing your own use cases, and a roadmap for AI adoption as an organisation in a lot more detail. If you'd like more details on that, you can go to campfire-ai.com or drop me a line after the session. I'll also include my LinkedIn address in the slides in case you'd like to connect. And if you have any questions, please do chuck them into the chat. Thank you. So I see a couple of questions. Best AI for generating infographics. That's a great one. The few times I've had to do that, I've actually used ChatGPT. So they have, on the paid for version, you have an advanced data analytics module, which is very good and can write Python, which is a programming language, to generate good infographics. I've used that most of the times I want to do it. I would also give a mention to Microsoft Copilot. They have now integrated Python within Excel. So if you've got an existing Excel document, you can ask it to generate infographics, and it will create code to create those graphics for you within within Excel. It's really, really powerful. It's very unusual for me to be praising Copilot. Previously, I would have said it's not one of the best, but actually they've made a big effort recently to improve it. So two options there. ChatGPT on the paid for version has a model called advanced data modeling, which you can ask it to create infographics based on data sets. So it'll also do the analysis and then do that. Microsoft Copilot is very good. I'm sure there are others, but those are two that certainly I've used for those kind of things. You haven't mentioned AI agents today. No. So today is around some use cases. AI agents is a topic we're going to cover, I think it's next month or the month after. So please do join us for that one. So AI agents are where you can ask it to do a project rather than a specific task. They're beginning to become available, and we just simply for time couldn't cover those today. This is just around some ideas for use cases to get you interested. Tony, how secure is the enterprise Copilot? So security, especially of technical role, is very important, as you can imagine. No, so that's a really great question. So one of the reasons a lot of organizations are using Microsoft Copilot versus other tools is that it works within what is called the knowledge graph. So it aligns with your standard security rights as an individual. So if you have a license for Microsoft Copilot within Office, it will only have access to documents that you have access to as an individual. So although there might be other documents on the network that would be relevant, it doesn't have access to those as standard. So it is very secure in that respect. They also do have an enhanced security module, which I haven't looked at in detail, but that is around more modular security for Copilot and what documents it has access to. So I would say if you have that as consideration, then that's a good reason that you have there. And it doesn't remember the data for other users. Could you perhaps expand on that? I'm not sure I understand that question. That would be great. I hope that was helpful. But yeah, certainly one of the reasons a lot of organizations love Microsoft Copilot is you're not sending your data off to somewhere else. It's using data within your own organization. Ross, yeah, very important point I was just going to come on to. Thanks for mentioning it. So within ChatGPT or any of the tools, it's always worth checking for the options that are set around privacy. So if you are using them, generally speaking, it used to be if it was free to use, then they were able to use your data for training. For some of them, that's not the case now. So Claude or OpenAI, if you signed up after February of last year, then it is now private by default. But yet the section you're looking for in ChatGPT to make sure your data is private is the option that says improve the model for everyone and set that to off. Thanks for that note. Great minds think alike, or idiots rarely differ, whichever way you want to think of that saying is up to you. Tony, did you want to expand on your question around does it remember the data for other users? I think we've now covered that, but if I haven't, please let me know. So effectively, the data you provide, is it not used for any other use of Copilot internally? That's a good question, actually. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. So I know that it only has access. So your use of Copilot only has access to data that you have access to. I don't know whether there is any internal training of the model based on what you've been asking. I suspect, again, it would be within those boundaries. What you can do, though, is you can also create agents, which someone mentioned a minute ago in the chat, which are based on a specific set of documents. So one thing we have internally is we have an HR agent, and it has a view on a folder, which has all of the up-to-date company handbook, maternity cover handbook, all of that kind of stuff. And you can ask it any questions, and it will only ask it based on that folder of documents, which we make sure is up to date. So we have an agent as a way of getting around that kind of specific set of knowledge. And by putting guardrails around it, we say, don't look externally, only answer questions within here. And if you can't answer the question, then tell them to refer to their manager. And what we found is that some of the basic questions that were going to HR and the finance team, now people are just using the chatbot because they know it's based off that. We've tested it fairly extensively just to make sure it wasn't hallucinating answers. And we've actually found it really, really effective in that respect. So people can say, these are my hours, how many days leave am I entitled to? And it, based on those documents, it can give them an answer really quickly and easily. Cool. So just got a couple of minutes left. If anyone does have any other questions, please do let me know. Chuck them in the chat. Otherwise, thanks very much for your time today. I hope that was interesting. Just going to give one final little plug. We've got our next campfire workshop running on Thursday the 27th at Dorset Chamber. We go into this stuff in a lot more detail. We talk a lot more around the governance side of things. There's a couple of places left, I think 4 or 5 for this month, but we will be running a date in March as well and April. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to see you there. Yes, we will be sharing the slides. So if you've registered on Teams, we'll be sending those out to all of you. If you don't receive that for whatever reason, my LinkedIn address is on the screen, so you can find me linkedin.com/in/Luke Williams. Drop me a line if you don't get those slides later on this afternoon. What I'll do is I will convert these PDF and send them out. My colleague will send them out later on this afternoon. Great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your time with us this morning. I hope that's been useful. It is, we can only sort of touch on the basics during a lunchtime session. Thank you for joining us. And we've got some more sessions coming up. So please stay tuned for those. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.